report, which is Lesley coming up to discuss our academic calendar. This is round, what, 3 now that we're talking about it? Okay.
Okay, round 3, calendar saga. I think we can go through the report pretty quickly. Everyone received a draft, and I know draft calendar A was 2 pages of the same. Don't know how that happened, but there's nothing different. If you are seeing 2 pages, it's the exact same calendar. So drafts A and B are pretty much the same calendar, with just one slight difference, and we'll talk about that. This is a version of the calendar C that you saw last time around. So calendar C among the polling groups was the clear, popular version of the calendar, and so we played with that one a little bit. So that's what we're going to look at here. Again, we're just going to revisit our guiding principles, the things that we have to look at when we're planning the calendar. We have to reach those 75,600 minutes for the school year. We want to remain student-focused always. We want to balance our semesters as possible. We look at our exam and testing calendar. We look at extended planning, professional learning times for teachers, and our graduation date. Other considerations, again, student activities, overall community preferences from past surveys, and this year we did another survey again, and we'll talk about that. Alignment with dual credit, calling college for the spring break, especially, and then placement and duration of breaks. Something that we talked about last year during this process that we put forward this year is looking at the November election day every year, not just in the big year. Aligning with our neighboring districts, we're working together as a group. An email went out today to, everybody's trying to figure out where everybody is landing, especially in regard to the breaks. Flexibility of instructional minutes, and then teacher recruitment and retention is another item that came up as we were, again, looking at our data and feedback. So first we'll talk about the survey, and the groups that we surveyed surveyed our principals and assistant principals, our Plano Leadership Executive Committee, the Superintendent Student Advisory Council, our PTA Council, which was the biggest group, and so the survey results, they weighed in heavily there, the Teacher Leader Council, and our District-Based Improvement Committee. Really quickly, as of Friday or Thursday afternoon, Friday afternoon, when we put this together, we had 420 total responses, a little bit over 420. That increased. Today I looked at it again. We got an additional 50 responses in, but it did not change the outcome. So I didn't put new charts in. The charts stayed the same. Only one chart changed a little bit, and I'll talk about that. But the questions that we asked is, what's your preference regarding the school start day? And by far the midweek start was the most popular. We asked, do you favor adding minutes to the instructional day in order to bank time for bad weather days? And it was a good resounding yes. And also, do you favor adding minutes to the instructional day for professional learning time, planning, intervention, enrichment? And again, we heard from all of our groups a yes. And then we've got, do you want a fall break? And yes, so that's the one that changed. That's closer to 70% now with the additional 50. And again, with parents being our biggest group that we surveyed. So do you prefer a Monday or Friday professional learning day? So when it's a professional learning day or student holiday, that we did see a difference as opposed to it being here a student teacher holiday when teachers are off as well. So Monday is the preferred, and with the staff, saying they want that time off. But when it's also a teacher holiday, I'm sorry, did I say Monday was the preferred time? Friday is preferred when it's a holiday for everybody. And then would you be willing to end the school year after Memorial Day in order to gain a full week fall break? No, they do not want to do that. Do you think it's important to align winter and spring breaks with neighboring districts? And that's a yes. And again, the same with the overall calendar. Less of a yes, but still that's a yes to work with our neighboring districts to align the calendar. So with that feedback, we didn't ask, here are 2 calendars. What do you prefer? We wanted just some hard facts. And there was a lot of consistency across the board. So that was kind of neat to see consistency across the polling groups. So with that in mind, we want to, again, look at flexibility. So, I'm sorry. Are we okay? Oh, okay. All right. So flexibility of instructional minutes. We talked about increasing minutes to maximize the instructional day, and we wanted to do that without really changing the teacher workday. There would be additional time with students, but not additional time in the workday. No changes in the breakfast and lunch schedule. There would need to be an adjustment to the afternoon transportation schedule because of how we run buses in Plano ISD. We have to have that staggered bus time. Benefits of extending the minutes, we talked about having maybe some more time for professional learning communities, more time for intervention and enrichment, maybe some more choices in student courses, especially there's been some discussion that will continue with some of the students and how many periods during the day. Banking minutes for emergency closure, flexibility to reduce the length of the school calendar without reducing instructional time. So we did find the ability we'll talk about this. This is just an example of what our current calendar is, what the end times might look like if we are adding 5 minutes, and what the end time would look like if we're adding 10 minutes. So that's what you see on this calendar, on this chart. So if we did that, this is currently the number of instructional minutes that we have at all of our levels. With an additional 5 minutes, we gain enough time there to gain one student teacher holiday. So that's a day less for students and teachers across the board. And then we are also able to bank a bad weather makeup day. Adding 10 minutes gives us pretty much the same thing, but we're able to go ahead and bank 2 bad weather makeup days. So if we have bad weather days, we've already made it up in instructional time, so we don't have to take a bad weather day. And that's the major difference. And so when you're looking at the calendar features, they're pretty much identical. The difference is that is in the bad weather makeup days. And so I know that hopefully you've had some time to study that. And then if we go back, I forgot to mention here. So what we're looking at here, we're currently at 177. Our current, all right, 177 days, right? 175, I'm sorry. We're at 175 instructional days currently. And with the change, we would have 1 less teacher day and 1 less student day. So 174 instructional days and 186 teacher days. So that's a difference that we would see. And then, again, that's the summary of what the features look like. And our vetting groups, just to revisit that, these are the folks that we have seen and the dates that we saw them, our timeline, including working with you guys for approval, our approval process with you. We came to you on October 18th and again on November 1st. We're looking again today at some drafts that are not very different from one another, but does include adding those instructional minutes. And then we would like to come back on December 6th with a proposed calendar for approval. And so with that, I'd love to hear your feedback and questions.
Well, I thought the draft B was pretty good. I mean, you did an amazing job with the academic calendar. I'm so glad that we're going to give our students and our teachers an October break, which is what they wanted, and that has always been in the card. We've always had a positive vote for a break in October, so I'm so glad that we have this in there. And it looks great, but I think the 10-minute added for draft B would be good. So I'm not sure what my other board members think.
So I
Thanks
think
for
the addition of, the addition having the 5 minutes versus 10, I like the 10, being able to bank those days. It makes sense to me, and that's great contingency, especially with the weather we've had in the past couple of Januaries and Februarys. So that's great preparation. When I looked at the original C4 and A4 that we reviewed last time, I think C4 had 6 out of the 10 months that has instruction had professional learning days, and then option A4 had 7 out of 10 of those months, and then both of these, A and B, that we're reviewing tonight, only have 5. And so I know one of the big changes that was made was that we added the October fall break.
Right.
And when I think about improving student outcomes and giving teachers the opportunity to plan ahead and have those opportunities, I think that's more important than a fall break in terms of improving student outcomes. And so if there's a way to get those professional learning days back for those months and have a fall break, I'm all for it. But if I have to choose between the two, I'm perfectly fine busting up the fall break because I want to focus on what improves student outcomes.
Okay, that's good feedback. I know that we talked that through as a team, and I don't know, Dr. Williams, if you have anything to add, or Dr. Anderson.
I'm looking at the calendars and I'm seeing staff development in October. So the orange or gold boxes. So I'm not sure I understand the question. So
what I'm saying is when we reviewed last time, we had draft A4 and C4. And let's take, for example, C4, in September 1st, we had a professional or staff day, and we no longer have that in the new calendar. And we also had a professional learning day, let's see, not January.
In April.
April.
It was in April.
And April 29th, and we no longer have that. So those are two kind of spread out days that teachers can use to reassess and reset and review data and do what they do to prepare, mid-semester, have those midfield meetings that I think are important for improving student outcomes. If the trade-off that we're really talking about is the fall break, then I'd be less in favor of the fall break and more in favor of splitting that up, because the feedback I've heard from teachers, very limited number of teachers, is that having more staff days and opportunities to drill back down and reassess and pivot mid-semester is very valuable to them.
well, that's good feedback. One of the things, and Sonal, you may have, let me just chime in there really quick. I know one of the things that the team took into consideration is, so how do we give time prior to each 9-week period? And so you have, like, before school starts to set the first 9 weeks. Then your October, kind of the rest of the semester. Then you come back, January sets the pace. Then you've got a February that kind of gets you through. Once you hit the April, May, I mean, you start your testing season. So one of the things that, going through this with our teacher groups, was if you had to eliminate a day, it was the April day that they were interested in, like, can we move that April date up to October? Because this is the time we need it the most.
And September.
And yeah, so.
And I know the survey did have, and it's limited too, because they can either comment or they don't comment. We did have a comment or two from the survey that they didn't want a September day. They had just gotten started and they didn't want that. And then when we looked at where the 9 weeks fell, that 12th and 13th in October for them to use as staff days is a great time for them to assess that first 9 weeks, make plans, and get ready for that second 9 weeks. And I agree with Dr. Williams. By the time you get into April, you're testing and your calendar is eaten up with a lot of other things that it really, I don't know that it would make a difference.
We took that April day and moved it. I know there was a version of the calendar that had April, but didn't have a day coming back from winter break for a staff day. So that's where that April day went. It went back up to the January time.
Okay, and just one other comment in terms of totally understand the perspective of if we're in the testing season, that you're not necessarily in need of an additional staff day to reassess because the kids are going into it. My only thought would be with April and May, there not being a single day off in either one of those. When I think about going into finals or something like that, if the students had a 3-day weekend to drill down, which I hope they would spend every minute of that 3-day weekend preparing for a final, I just think of there's not a lot of breaks there and there's not a lot of opportunities for that. Just perspective of what that time could be used for, and the fact that aside from April 1st, and there's not really until school's out a day off, and that's a long stretch after having a October break and then a November break and then a winter break and then a spring break, and then all of a sudden you got nothing till the rest of the year. Just a thought.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you wanted to take the April 1st date, you're already talking about taking the Friday. I'm assuming that's Easter weekend. You're talking about taking Good Friday off, so you could move that Monday, April 1 date down to, a couple of weeks later to give maybe muster. Everybody can take off for muster on the 21st. Something like that. I mean, that might be an option, and that gives you that little break there as well that Cody's talking about.
I would just agree that remembering from spring break on to the end is quite the slog, and just to have a day off to just get a breath before you go into all of it is greatly appreciated. I also am curious. I know it's important to have that staff development as you're going back, but with the break kind of being long at winter, I don't know if the 8th needs, if moving that teacher day another place as well.
I think that was something they said teachers wanted, right?
Yeah, and it
Yeah,
gives
they want that,
secondary
okay.
campuses, it gives them,
No.
they get sometimes whole new schedules second semester, so it gives an opportunity to kind of deal with the second semester schedule piece.
No, totally agree with that. It's hard to come back from not having a day just to get ready. Totally get that. It's just that slog from spring break on does seem a little daunting.
So maybe so that we don't have to come back again next month and have another discussion, can we talk about some final things in here and maybe give some instruction to Lesley and she can finalize it and we can approve it next time? So I think the April 1st date, is everybody comfortable saying bump that down maybe 3 weeks or something like that?
Muster's on Sunday, though, just saying.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be muster day. It can be a different day.
Okay, just wanted to point that out.
We'll just want to check the testing calendars, Star and AP.
Yeah, I think we'll trust y'all to pick out the appropriate date.
And I know we're talking about April. It could be the first week of May. Again, depending on the testing and,
Yeah.
AP testing, there's all kinds of stuff to consider. But I personally would just like to see a day in either later April or some part of May. But also, it would have to be it would have to be strategic in the sense that it helps. It's not
Right.
just to have a day off, but that it's at a point that would actually help teachers if they need a break, or students because something's up and coming and it gives them an extra day to prepare.
Yeah, I would say that didn't their data say something about holidays are better on a Friday? So move it from that Monday to a Friday somewhere after maybe a week,
Say that again.
I think staff wanted Mondays.
For PD.
for professional development.
PD.
Yeah.
But for this
For
would be.
vacations, they like Fridays.
This would be a holiday for both. So we could see, depending on testing, we can see.
And
Yeah.
3 days of testing and get the Friday off. That's a nice idea. It's a really nice idea. Just saying.
So I have a question, and I know we talked about this at the last meeting, and I can't remember what the reasoning was to extend the winter break so far into January and push it.
Yeah, that was to align with our neighboring districts. So in meeting with Frisco, Allen, and McKinney, they're all looking at that time. And some of them have already approved a calendar that looks like that.
Okay, because I think that it's hard for some working parents, but I don't know how important it is to be aligned with our neighbors. I guess
neighborhoods and friends and families, you know, play soccer together and all of that stuff. So I guess there's that correlation.
Yeah, and we did get a little glimpse. So when we had the versions of the calendar that we were vetting and saying, which do you prefer? The calendar C had that same holiday at wintertime, and that was the most preferred.
Okay.
It also gives us the balanced semesters. And then one of the things that was pointed out on the other calendars when it had the earlier holiday break, it was, Thanksgiving and then a week, and then you start with semester exams. And so it really cut even further into the time as far as losing and keep having a really short first semester and a longer second semester.
So I see on draft C4 and A4 that the 29th of April was what we had down as a staff day. Do we know why that was an ideal day? I'm wondering if that would just also be an ideal day for that day that we're talking about moving around.
We probably didn't have a testing conflict that day, so that's.
So that
Yeah.
problem might already be solved then. It might be the 29th that works because it worked with the previous calendars.
But we can look at the 26th as well.
All right, so,
Right.
so that's one item, and of course, this is not a discussion and action item, so we're not voting on anything, but I think we do need to tell them which we would prefer, 5 minutes or 10 minutes. I prefer the 10-minute calendar.
Well, I had a question about that because I thought about what this would do for a campus. One of my favorite, I wish in another lifetime I could do, would be to the scheduler of a campus. To me, that's the hardest job, but it's also very fun to be able to put all the pieces together. And so I wanted to ask specifically Dr. Anderson, having been a campus principal relatively recently, as a master planner for a campus, what do our master planners in all 72 campuses thinking about what they would do with those 10 minutes?
With all the Post-it notes, it takes a lot of Post-it notes.
It would be a lot of Post-it notes of all colors.
We love Post-it notes.
Yes, of all colors.
Yeah. I when I was working with Lesley on this, I said to her, 10 minutes easily for me. If I were still a campus principal working on a master schedule, there is so much more you can do with 10 minutes than with just 5 extra minutes in a day. So I most definitely prefer the 10 minutes. Not that I matter here, but you asked me specifically.
You said something that was important. In 5 minutes, you might tend to do
so
X, but 10 minutes you would tend to
I'm not saying
do.
they would, but I think the first thing that would come to, I'm looking at Steve and Shauna in the audience, but I think the first thing that comes to mind when you have 5 extra minutes, well, okay, let's just add an extra minute to passing periods and get the day. Like, I think that's because you go, what do you do with 5 minutes? You're going to extend one class period 5 minutes longer and the others are going to be shorter. I mean, it's just hard to work with. Where when you have the more minutes you have, the easier it is to figure out a schedule that benefits kids.
And would it make an incredible difference for bus schedule? I mean, 10 minutes really isn't that much. is it?
Johnny?
I don't know.
I mean, and relatively speaking, it's not. I mean, what we would do is we'd have to shift all of the afternoon route. I'm assuming this would be tacked on the end of the day, right? So
Yes.
everything would be tacked, just moved out 10 minutes. It means drivers would get home 10 minutes later, kids would get home 10 minutes later. But I think that's all relative. So, I mean, 10 minutes is.
Anybody else want to weigh in on the 5 versus 10 minutes?
Well, I think that the 10 minutes would be more beneficial than the 5 minutes. I agree with that. Because you're right, what you said, Dr. Anderson, is that it's more beneficial to the staff.
All right, Lesley, you think you have good feedback that you
I
can come
do.
back with one calendar?
Yes, one calendar, last time.
All right.